I mean, obviously, if we open right, we're here to talk about the trade for Von Miller. So obviously, it was a opportunity that we felt would help our football, and so we decided to pursue it. And I think that leads us to, let's call it the 2 p.m. press conference and the quick, like, it's Jeopardy-like hands up from Lindsay.
We'll open up with Lindsay.
Now look at this, Gary and Jordan. Too bad y'all got to get to the next question.
You got to be quick these days. Les, can you kind of just tell us what went into the decision to acquire Von? Picking up an outside linebacker, why that position, and what you think he's going to add to your defense?
Yeah, I think the position really, outside linebacker, very important in our defense, especially someone, right, who is has a pedigree of affecting the passer like he has. So what we felt like in any of these opportunities, and there's players that get shopped or discussed, but okay, how does he fit? How does he help us? And we have Leonard Floyd, we have Aaron Donald. We did feel like that adding Von to that front seven, to that mix would be a player that would stress, right, the protection, stress the opponent, the one-on-one matchup. So our goal is to try to build a team that stresses opposing teams, applies pressure to opposing teams, whether it's offense or defense.
And then something Sean mentioned when we spoke with him yesterday was that you guys do value picks, and that there's a formula behind how you're doing things with your picks. Can you kind of take us a little bit inside what your long-term vision is, just because seeing in this upcoming draft as it looks right now, you guys really don't have too many picks?
Well, the interesting thing, I think I kidded with, and I get it where we're at, right? Especially in the Twitter age, right? I even got a mug that my kids have given me about what I feel about draft picks, and I get the shallow narrative, and it's fun and it's entertaining, but I think I joked with Ed Werder one time. We like to think we use our picks innovatively, maybe creatively, and because we value draft picks, it's actually valuable to the Denver Broncos. But again, what's not on the draft sheet right now is we're going to get, I think it is, if you go to the NFL website, we have Brad Holmes's compensatory third round pick. We are projected to get 4 more picks, compensatory picks, based on the players that signed elsewhere last year. So should have around 8 total picks. So we knew that. We there was even talks in this trade, right, where whether we give up a pick this year or next year, or let's call it this year's draft, which would be 22, or even the 23 draft. But because we don't necessarily know how many comps we're getting then, the 23 draft, we felt like it'd be better to give up more this year because we knew we were going to collect, Brad's plus 4 more in some way. We also have one of the younger rosters in the NFL, even though we do have some older veterans. And with that being said, those young players who are contributing for us now, who haven't yet, let's call it, begin their journey and contributing, they're going to be around. So it's a tough roster to make some. So we there's a lot of nuance in this, but to say we do not value draft picks would probably, I get why it would be said, but as we've discussed here many times, you look at our offensive line, most of those players were drafted by us, some not as early as we considered what valuable draft picks are, but we do believe in utilizing every round of the draft. We do believe in our symbiotic relationship with our coaching staff, kind of knowing what we're looking for. We believe in their ability to develop those players, and we believe in their courage to, guess what, play them when it's time to play them, versus, let's call it, going out and signing maybe veterans to fill roles and contributors.
Thanks.
Gary?
Les,
I don't think that answer is going to stop the narrative, though, Lindsay. So we don't care about draft picks.
The memes are the meme's a funny one, you have to admit.
Oh, I have teenagers, so it's actually made me a cool dad at age 50. You know, nothing to do with football or that. It's all the memes that are in the meta sphere. See, I didn't know that word, Lindsay. And what teenagers will do to you. And it's soon. You're 13 years away, maybe 14 years away. That blonde hair turns gray. All right, Gary, sorry about the interruption.
That's okay. So Les, can you update us on what's happening or not happening with Deshon Jackson? He posted his Instagram account kind of what looked like a goodbye message. So has he been released, waived? What's happening?
So we weren't able to trade Deshon, and he has been released, but technically he will not show up on today's waiver wire. It will be tomorrow's waiver wire.
So he has been released.
So in nuance, right? We did not release him before 1 p.m. We did release him after 1 p.m.
Okay. How would you kind of summarize, how that worked out for the Rams in terms of what your plan was?
I'm not going to give it a grade. One came to my mind, but that'd probably be the headlines, right? But obviously it was an experiment that we attempted. Didn't work out as well as we wanted to, as Deshon wanted it to, as even Sean wanted it to, and especially those two, because they have a relationship that probably goes. It does. I know for a fact it goes deeper than football. So didn't work out for us, and that is somewhat why we wanted to move in this direction, try to come up with a win-win in this situation.
Jordan.
Hey Les, wondering if you can take us through the days leading up to pulling the trigger on this trade, and particularly sort of your history in appraising Von as a talent, and then also some of the creativity you guys got into in terms of discussing with the Broncos about that salary balance.
Yeah, it was. I didn't necessarily keep a journal. I do know toward the end of last week, and George and I know each other for many years. We obviously, had discussions during that Kenny Young thing. Obviously, we weren't doing a Kenny Young for Von Miller trade, but so George reached out there at the end of the week, right, we just couldn't take on, based on what we've done in the past with our cap situation, just can't take on Von Miller. So that's when we discussed what it would take from each side, like the variables that really couldn't change. That I don't want to say non-negotiables, but they were almost facts. And I think as they were analyzing their situation, we were analyzing ours. We came up with what we felt like was something that was good for the Rams and the Broncos at this particular moment in time.
And then just your historical assessment of Von as a player. Sean McVay indicated he's somebody who's been on y'all's radar, obviously with his status in the league, but just from a talent perspective, in balance with what you guys do, someone who's been on y'all's radar for a little while.
Oh yeah, it was. I remember because we played them in the preseason. I think all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, Von Miller still. He is genetically gifted, and then they started very fast. Like they won games, they had leads, and Von got to do what Von does, and that's really affect the passer, especially when teams get down and their tendency shifts more toward passing than balance, and that was kind of fun to see, right, when someone like Von, right, has that big month, and he was he's player of the month and things like that. So I think that all started this summer, but that's just respecting Von. Now but we obviously got in the lab and really, let's call it downloaded the film and watched every play from the start of this season till his last play in Cleveland to try to determine, hey, how Von fits, where he's at, and what we think of him moving forward.
Thanks.
Maria?
Hey, Les, Sean had talked about, what he thought obviously about, Vaughn coming in. I'm curious if you had a chance to talk to Raheem Morris and just kind of go over how he thinks that, he'll be worked in.
Yeah, that's it seems like a simple question, Maria, but really good in that, right? A lot of times, right, especially going back to the metasphere and the memes, hey, Von Miller's an all-pro, he's, wherever he stacks up on the all-time sack list, and you just add him, and it's Madden football. But there is an element, right, where you do sit down with Sean, you do sit down with Raheem, you sit down with the entire coaching staff and go, okay, this is who we have now. This is a chance to add Vaughn. What does that do for us? How does it help us? Why does it help us? Because that's where we're going to see, right, the results, the productivity is in the nuance of how adding someone like Vaughn to our defensive line helps us. And this bubble popped into my head, but you talk about it, that doesn't happen with every position, because let's just say there was a really good wide receiver available and you say, okay, yeah, he's Hall of Fame wide receiver, but he comes to our place, and does he, in Madden, does it help? Yes, but right, you only have so many passes, you only have so many balls, so you can't spread it around. So maybe adding that caliber player doesn't help. So good question, and yes, it definitely takes a little more nuance, a little more specific conversation on how, if we do this, how does it help us?
Thank you.
Jared?
Oh, hey, Les, I got a couple things.
Hey, Jared.
How were you able to weigh the risk of what Vaughn brings physically? He's had some injury issues. How were you able to get settled on that? And then also, I want to, second question has to do with your personnel department, your department, and the scouting. And I'm curious how you think this might add, a layer of pressure to get mid to late round picks. I mean, I know you draft you scout all these guys for every round. In the absence of not having the high picks, what does that do for, how you approach scouting?
Well, on the first part of your question on the physical part, obviously you've got a past history, you got a present history. Until you bring Vaughn into physical to see in particular how that the injury that occurred in Cleveland's going to affect him, right, today, tomorrow, into the future. So, but big picture with rushers, and especially let's call it Hall of Fame caliber rushers, usually they're genetically gifted. So I like to say all of a sudden they're driving a car with 9 gears instead of 5. That's just mom, dad, God, bless them with those gears. And as they do get older, maybe they go from 9 gears to 7, but they still got 2 more than some of your younger players. And a lot of times with these older players, all of a sudden they're now combining that with this wisdom and earned over the years of how to get to the QB. So a lot of times you see at that rushing position, players play into their 30s. So when we got Vaughn in today, did the physical, we were able to assess where he's at now and how to progress forward. And you're looking at this, right? We're actually looking at this from a standpoint, right? How soon can he help us? Can he help us into the if we're fortunate enough to continue going and make the 2021 tournament, how can he help us there? And then there's a long-term vision for Vaughn as well that we're not solving today or tomorrow, but we did discuss. Scouting staff, yes, they're like all the memes, they're in Cabo right now. But no, that is, it's interesting. Everybody on the memes, right, would say, hey, your scouting staff can just go take a vacation. This one actually, I've said it many times, this actually, right, you got to do, I just want to say you roll up your sleeves and work harder, because that would kind of, let's call it, that would make the assumption that when we have a first or a second or a third, we don't really work hard and those are easy picks. But it does create an element of really being able to dissect the draft from top to bottom. And we still have to dissect right from top to bottom. You still have to dissect who might be a top 100 player. And you do that because, wait, what if we decide to move up from our 3rd round pick that we have it and go grab someone? You got to know those players too. And like we've assessed, we believe in our model. We got a lot of experience personnel men. We've got really let's call it creative, bright, analytical group that helps us analyze information. And what we have found out that is hey, there are players that can help a football team in every single round. And it's not just, I call it getting lucky. Now, I would say situational and person, right? There's times, right, a person may get drafted to a team in the situation they're deep, so that person never gets a chance to play. But maybe that player gets cut, finds a situation where he gets the chance to showcase his skills and becomes a player and all that. But I think we'll work with our coaching staff. We'll sit down and figure out, hey, when it comes to future seasons, not necessarily this season, what type players what roles do we need, and how do we go fill them in the draft or even in trades or other methods of acquiring players. The positive thing for us is, Jared, is we do have a group of players, a core group of players that are very experienced and that we plan on being around. So the nice thing being at this stage or phase or in this window is, we're not necessarily looking for, right, let's call it a number 1 receiver that you might need to be picking in the top 20 picks for. That's the fortunate thing of being here. But does it mean we stay here? And the future is always uncertain, and it's up to us to make it as certain as possible.
Thanks, Les.
Kurt,
Kurt,
you're on mute, Kurt.
How about that? Sorry, Les. Hey, when you're putting together a deal like this, and you talked about the finances and what he can still do as a pass rusher, if you almost had a pie chart, how much of it is, hey, the NFC is really tough, and we're at 7-1, but technically not even leading their division? Did that play into this equation?
I think when you're 7-1, right? There is a realism there that, okay, up through 8 games, wow, we've done it pretty dang good. We're now in a position, right, to maybe, as you said, hey, in the old days, host a playoff game, not host a game, things like that. You always have to be aware of that. A lot of times in these situations, because it's the NFL, that there's certain players that are available, but maybe they don't, let's call it change the math, tilt the field a little bit like a Vaughn does. And you analyze that and say, well, hey, maybe we'd rather stay pat with who we have. Maybe we'd like to give one of our younger players. But when there is a player that has a chance to tilt that math, it's definitely worth sitting down and going, hey, wait a minute, we are 7-1. And oh, by the way, like you said, we're a 5th seed, and we're traveling week 1 of the playoffs. That's the I guess you would call it the cool thing for whoever's televising the NFC playoffs, right? It seems like there's going to be a lot of heavyweights, and those are going to be some definitely some very competitive games and must see TV if things keeps going the way they're going.
Just a quick follow-up. Maybe one of the best quotes of the year yesterday, when Lindsay asked Sean what his reaction was when he heard, and excuse my French, it was something like, "Are you me?" Can you describe that from your side, and how far in the process was it when you brought him in?
Well, it was toward the end of last week, and there's many times this time of year, right, where, I mean, Sean and I have a very close relationship. We worked together for 5 years, so we can kid with each other and things like that. And around the deadline, you might play a joke or whatever on Sean. But so there was like, wait a minute, are you I'm not going to quote him, right? Or can I? Are you me. Can I say that? It's recorded. But because you're like, that's kind of a shocking name. It's a little different than going with, hey, this number 2 tight end for, team A that, I joke all the time, right? You go in and say, hey, we got this number 2 tight end from team A. And if we bring him in, he's a really good blocker, he'll really help our run game per se. That's a little different than, oh, by the way, there's a Hall of Fame pass rusher that could be available. And oh, by the way, they may be willing to take on the salary so that we actually have the ability to acquire him. And then it becomes, ooh, wait a minute. I'll let you finish the statement.
Got it. Thank you, Les.
Beaches.
Hey, Les.
Hey, Greg.
Two quick things. You mentioned at the end of an answer a few minutes ago that you had, and then there's the long-term future with Von that we're not going to solve today or tomorrow, but we did discuss. Is that just an indication that there's a willingness on the Rams to talk about something beyond his current contract and to gauge their interest in that?
Oh, definitely willing, and we discussed that with his representation, and because I think in these situations, right, so the really neat thing about these opportunities is there's this element of, right, a player like Von, when he is, maybe it's best for, right, the Broncos at where they're at, not necessarily the year they won Super Bowl 50, but maybe in 2022, is it best to move on for Von? But there is this element, okay, how do we do what's best for the player and the team, not just the team. And I think that the cool thing about being in this city, hey, a lot of NFL football players, I'm sure, other players from other sports, they really would like to, right, be a part of a team in this city, right? And there's a lot of stars that have lined, right? City, new stadium, really good coach. When players that the coach, hey, that's an environment, that's a culture that, right, where football is important, but you're going to enjoy coming to work, you're going to enjoy life. And oh, by the way, the results have been good up to date. I always say that's just a regression analysis, and the future's still uncertain, and it's up to us to do what we got to do to continue, right, earning those results.
And then with Deshon leaving today and Tutu being done for the year, never really got to make an impact. Do you feel an urgency to have another wide receiver on the roster by Sunday? Or are you comfortable going in with the three big guys and with Ben?
We're still discussing that internally, because there is some options that we have internally, and right, how Sean's going to use them in the offense, and how Joe D can use them on special teams and things like that. So we got to walk through that, and also Sean's very well aware, right, with our top 3 who are playing very well right now, right, how to, let's call it, I don't want to say put them on a pitch count per se, but manage some of their load, that so when we if we're fortunate enough to play deep in the January, they're fresh then too. So that's stuff we're discussing internally, and we'll try to figure out.
Thanks.
Stu.
Hey, Les, I know you guys,
Stu.
what's going on? You made a move for an outside linebacker or an edge player 3 years ago as well, and bring Dante Fowler, experiencing similar success. I know the circumstances each season are different when it comes to exploring possibilities and who you might want to acquire at the trade deadline, but what is it about the edge position especially that you guys feel, back then and even now, that's like really critical to achieving the ultimate goal that everybody's striving for?
Yeah, I think if the vision that always comes into my mind with Dante and that move, right, is if we're fortunate enough to play for an NFC championship, if we're fortunate enough to get in overtime, Dante, maybe the Saints hadn't really analyzed that play, but maybe they slide and put a couple extra guys on Aaron Donald and Dante, or your Ed rusher beats a one-on-one and hits Drew Brees, and the ball flutters in the air, and John Johnson makes the pick, and next thing you know, we kick the game-winning field goal. So that's that's a realistic story that paints a picture what an edge rusher who harasses the QB can do you that maybe you don't notice if we would have gone out and made a, let's call it a more boring move and traded for a blocking tight end. Even though, right, if you go to Green Bay, good old UCLA alum Mercedes Lewis really helped them the other night blocking. So I call that not as a little more boring, but those guys, right, have a role and contribute as well.
We'll wrap up with Kevin and then a quick one for you, Gary.
Hi, Les. Les and Artis,
Kevin.
sorry for jumping on about 10 minutes late. Sometimes
I didn't even notice.
Oh, well, thank you.
But that's because I'm making a little window pane here. I only got so many. So
sometimes those advisory emails go in the wrong box. I assume I'll catch up, but I wondered if you could give me the 45-second encore rendition of Deshon Jackson, why it came to this, what the financial implications are, depending, I guess, on what happens next.
I mean, Artis, this is recorded. Can't we just share it?
Yeah, absolutely we can, but he just wants you to say it again just for his own personal use.
But in 45 seconds.
No, in 45 seconds, right? I think I mentioned, obviously it didn't work out like any of us, like our vision was when we signed him, right? That's Deshon, that's the Rams as a whole, and because it wasn't working, we felt like it was best for all of us and the individuals included to part ways and move on to our next chapters.
And you tried.
Yeah, I think if you missed, we weren't able to trade him, and so we did release him after 1 o'clock today. Will not be on today's waiver wire, but will be on tomorrow's waiver wire.
Okay. I don't know if you've commented on what the financial cap implications are, if he's claimed or not. But...
Yeah, if he is claimed, someone inherits, his entire contract. If he is not, there's still some guarantees that, that we're obligated to pay to Deshon.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank everybody for going through that.
Gary, wrap up with you, man.
Les, going back to January and the trade for Matthew Stafford, and now the trade deadline move for Von Miller. How would you kind of describe the steps you guys have taken to build a Super Bowl roster, and has it played out, the way you envisioned to this point in terms of those pieces coming together?
I think I mentioned earlier, again, that I always go Super Bowl. We throw that word around. I think our objective, right, big picture, our model, right, try to build a roster that really stresses and pressures the opponent. For 60, we're trying to build a roster to win many games, not just one. But we're also well aware, being 7-1, that okay, we do have a chance, right, to contend for a division. We do have a chance to make a run, maybe even for a home playoff game. And then once you get there, our model is as boring as it gets when it comes to all we can really focus on and control is what step 9 of the hill we're climbing, and that's the Tennessee Titans. And because if you look past that, right, the enemy's gonna have a say. So, but again, big picture, you try to mix the micro with the tellus. It's called the micro with the telly, the present with the future. So I think we're always trying to build a team that, right, has a chance to win a lot of games for a lot of years. And we're well aware that if we do that, we're going to have a chance to get in the playoffs, and you're going to definitely, and whoever you play in the playoffs, right, they're going to be good too. And the farther you go in the playoffs, right, maybe the better the teams get, and for sure, probably let's call it the more momentum that they've that's occurred by them actually getting deep. So those are tough games, and that's what our philosophy is. Vision to win a lot of games around here for a lot of years.